and welcome to another WLRN live stream from the beautiful downtown studios in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm Thistle Pettersen, your host, and my guests today to discuss the past year, really, of the Women Speak Out movement, the Let Women Speak movement USA, the Free Speech for Women movement, the movement that's been happening for in my estimation, for about a year since April 23rd, when we did a big Speakers Corner, Let Women Speak event in Madison, Wisconsin, in conjunction with Sisters for Sisters and Courage Calls to Courage. A lot has happened since that moment when trans activists and feminists were on the streets together, really confronting one another for the first time in the United States on such a large level. I'm talking with two women who were there at that April 23rd event today. I have Jennifer Thomas with us today. Hello, Jennifer. Let's see if I can, oh, whoops, sorry, add to stream. Here she is. Oh, and I have Katyjean as well. So welcome, ladies.
Hi,
Thank
Thistle.
you, Thistle. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so both of you have been involved so much in the Let Women Speak movement USA in this past year. Can you introduce yourselves and talk about the events that you've helped organize and that you've been part of, and just what the Let Women Speak USA movement has been to you? And we'll start with you, Jennifer, and I'm going to put you on your own screen here for you to speak.
Hi. Well, like you said, we did the first the first Speakers Corner, though, I think was Katyjean did one for Posey Parker in between the protests against the UN and the NCAA. So that like day or two in between, there was a Speakers Corner with Posey Parker and Katyjean, right, in DC. It was a pretty low key one. It wasn't advertised. You know, it was just kind of like, oh no, I think she did have an Eventbrite for it. So that was the first Speakers Corner, the official Speakers Corner that I went to in America. And then when I got to, you know, Sisters for Sisters, we had signed up, RevFemRebellion had signed up to do it. And honestly, like, Joy wasn't there. And if it weren't for Thistle, like, pressuring me, I probably wouldn't have done that Speaker Corner, but we did. So that ended up being like the first official Speakers Corner that the American, or Free Speech for Women events that the American women sort of did on their own, from according to my recollection. And then since then, it's been on. I mean, like, I think I've done 5 Speakers Corners myself, you know, organized them. And we've been doing, we have been rocking in the United States, the women. Like, we are doing such a good job. There's been, like, I don't know, maybe like 15 or 20 since then, right? Something like that.
Definitely. And we've been documenting these Speakers Corners. So we have all this footage of the TRAs and how horribly they've behaved. I'm going to just read real quickly what Katyjean, I agree with you, Jennifer. I do remember that there was a Speakers Corner with Katyjean in DC a couple weeks before the Madison event. But let's read what Katyjean, who was at the Speakers Corner in Madison, what she said about what Madison was. She says, "The Madison Speakers Corner was the largest direct confrontation I've seen between an organized group of women and trans rights activists so far here in America. I've been to and helped organize a number of protests in this country, and this is the first I've seen anything of this magnitude. The fact that women were physically blocked by men from the space we reserved and were being denied our right to free speech while the police stood down and let us be drowned out with misogyny, physical abuse, pushing, encircling women, hitting us with signs, and violent threats demonstrates with precise clarity that this agenda is about male entitlement and using male violence to silence and intimidate women from standing up for ourselves or holding any boundaries. Speakers Corners, like the one held in Madison, are a powerful way for women to claim space in the public realm and to make our voices heard. Women will not be silent in the face of a global corporate government and technologically led colonizing of our female-sexed bodies. If women don't have safety, if women don't have a choice, if women have no voice, then there will be no peace. Stand up now and defend women and girls. And so that's what Katyjean had to say. She was inspired to say after the Madison Speakers Corner. And it was quite an event. I feel that my experience of that Madison, and we'll get to Katyjean in a second, that experience of the Madison Speakers Corner for me is slightly different than how Katyjean described it. I don't feel that the TRAs were as aggressive as they've become in this past year. Starting in Madison, I mean, we were side by side with them.
Yeah.
And
yeah, they were at least like there was a dance happening there, right? It wasn't just this no dialogue, end of story, and we're going to be rough with you. It was sort of like, we're mad at you, no, you're mad at me. And, you know, it was a little bit of playfulness, a little bit, you know, I'm not saying it was fun playfulness, but a little bit. And then the temperature changed. You know, the temperature changed for me after Port Townsend, but so like Madison we were sort of like, I still felt like, you know, they weren't going to come after us physically, but after Port Townsend, I was like, we can't risk that because that was not a good scene, you know. And then of course, you know, Posey came and all the Let Women Speak ones that got violent. They weren't all violent, but there were enough that were violent to where, you know, we have to kind of rethink our plans about how we get on the ground and would I even do another Speakers Corner in Madison? Probably not, because of the police. The police weren't supportive to the women.
Well, I have something to say about that. I mean, the rapport and the communication between me as police liaison for our group in Madison and the police has been built up since that Madison event.
Oh, good.
And so, I mean, it's to the point where one of the women who was assaulted by a trans activist at one of our Speakers Corner events in September, which is April, May, June, July, August, September, 4 months later, we had a plan with the police. We had a dialogue with the police.
Wonderful.
And now she just received a letter stating that the person who had attacked her is, you know, under investigation and that they're doing something about it. So that has been built up. And I want to get to Katyjean, though. Let's just put you on the screen, Miss Katyjean, and you can introduce yourself and talk about what the Speakers Corner events have been for you and how you've been involved.
Hi, Thistle. Hello, WLRN audience, and thank you so much for including me in the conversation. So my memory of Let Women Speak pins also back to that same event in Madison that we are talking about. And it was something like this. So we had the podium set up and our PA equipment, and we had a permit, we had a reservation, we were meant to be there. Somehow the counter, I don't like to call it a counter protest, because then that implies that we are protesting. For us, it was a demonstration. It was a peaceful demonstration of our right to speak freely, and they protested against our peaceful women's centered demonstration. So at any rate, we were speaking. I think, Jennifer, you were the first speaker, and and then there was like maybe one or two other speakers, but I was like one of the early speakers. I was like the second or third speaker. And to the woman who went in between us, sorry, it was Beth. I think it was Beth who went in between us. And anyway, and then that's when they started getting really loud. And it was after I was done speaking. I remember it was someone from your WLRN staff, Thistle, and I won't say her name in case she prefers more to be anonymous, but she just kind of whispered in my ear. And she says, you know, she knows I have a loud voice. And she's like, I feel like we need some sort of a Let Women Speak let women speak to be happening right now. And I'm like, oh, I feel that. I'm picking up what you're throwing down. And so I just started going, let women speak. And like immediately, like I wasn't even done with the first time of saying and by the time I was saying what, like the women that were around me there in Madison were saying, let women speak, like they were joining with me immediately. And then we all started chanting, let women speak. And when we did that enough, then on their megaphone, they kind of quieted down. And you almost heard this kind of rumble almost with them where they were kind of like, okay, let them speak, let the women speak, and then like they thought maybe they were going to get a turn to speak too, or whatever. And I mean, if any of them in the interest of civil discourse wanted to take a turn to speak, I mean, at that point in the game, we probably would have given them an opportunity. And I'm not saying even if I was running an event that I wouldn't give an opportunity to anybody who wanted to speak freely at a free speech for women event to come up and speak. But that to me is my memory of Let Women Speak and how it started for me. That was the first time we chanted it loud and clear in the USA. It had great effect. It worked well, and yeah, I'll never forget that. It's a great chant. We should keep doing it.
Katyjean, you are so good out on the streets and on the mic. You speak from your heart, and the passion is just, it's so wonderful. It's palpable. I wanted to say that the first time I heard the phrase let women speak was in February of 2020 in Seattle, Washington, at the Fighting the New Misogyny event that Wolf put on, where Kara Dansky was a speaker, Lierre Keith was a speaker. And the trans activists were there at that public library event, and they were very disruptive. Some of them had gotten inside to the auditorium, and one was playing a piccolo, I remember. It was really loud, and they had noisemakers, and they had to be removed. And it was frustrating. It took a long time, like, for the police to actually get to the point where they were going into the audience and physically removing these disruptors. And that's when the audience just suddenly, out of frustration and spontaneously interrupted and turned around. And it was like 90% women at this event. And I think there were like 300 people in the audience. And they were just like, let women speak, let women speak, let women speak. And I mean, who knows who started that? But that was the first time I heard it. And I don't know if that's where Posey Parker picked it up from. Jennifer, do you know?
Oh, I mean, I think Let Women Speak was part of Speakers Corner in England for a while. I mean, she had the hashtag on Twitter. So what was that? Was she doing Speakers Corner at that time? I think so. I think that she was doing Speakers Corners in England back probably she just had started. Like from my recollection.
So that wasn't a spontaneous phrase that came out of the American movement. You think it came from across the pond and went over to America?
I think so. I mean, everybody was on Twitter, so it was an international group, so I'm not sure who coined the phrase "Let Women Speak." I'm pretty sure it came out of the Speakers Corner in England, but doesn't matter. I mean, let women speak.
Correct.
It's a great, thing to say, but I almost don't, I don't, in some ways I don't like it because I'm not asking.
Right.
So
I've heard that criticism of it too. But when I was in Seattle, because of the context, it was so powerful,
Yeah.
and so it's not just the actual words that are said, but it's the context, it's the history, it's like the feeling and the tone in which the words are delivered. And I feel like I didn't know that it was already being used before that Seattle, Washington event. That was the first time I had heard it. And when it was hundreds of women that just turned around and because they had to wait, for minutes for these young trans activists who were just being so rude to be removed. And it was an angry tone, and it was very powerful.
Yeah. Thistle, can you grab what Laura Kay just shared in the chat? Because that's what I was just going to say too, which is that she said, I think it's a universally spontaneous response to being silenced. And I think it happened in both places organically, which I think, yeah, a speaker of the English language, you know, when women are being silenced and women want to speak, and you're a speaker of the English language, you're probably going to put that phrase together. And yeah, so I don't think it necessarily matters where it originated. And to me, just like what Jennifer was saying about how we're not asking, I guess we're not asking to speak, but in some ways we do need to ask to be heard. Right. So in terms of let women speak, like we can say what we want to say, but we also need to be able to be heard. And we're not able to be heard when there's other people who think that their right to drown out our words is more important than our right to be heard. And so so for me, when I'm chanting let women speak, what I mean by that is let women be heard, because we can see that the woman is speaking. We can see that she's there speaking. She's not asking for your permission to speak. She is speaking. We want to hear what she has to say. And, you know, somebody else has something else to say, they can say that later. The cure for speech you don't like isn't to silence the person that's saying something you don't like. It's to speak more. And I invite a dialogue with anybody who would like to talk about whether or not women deserve sex-based rights, single-sex spaces, the right to our own language, the right to not be compelled to say things that we don't believe in, and respect for our power as the only thing on earth that can make a human being is a woman's body. There's no other.
I love the way that you phrase that you know, you want women to be heard, right? Like, and we deserve it, right? And asking people, don't you think women deserve, you know, the privacy in a bathroom? Because when you ask them like that, it takes away the power of like, just be kind. Well, what about what women deserve, right? So like, you know, when you're talking to people and, you know, like doing community engagement, to say, do you think women deserve, you know, public spaces, you know, private spaces within the public realm so they could do things like go to the bathroom and, you know, go to a locker room? And it's like, of course women deserve that, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so it kind of flips the script on them of I just have to pee to no, actually women deserve private, mm-hmm. safe spaces. So when they're in the state of undress in public, you know, we have those because we deserve them, not because you know, somebody gave them to us. We deserve that. We're half the population. We function in, that's how we function in society. You know, that we go out and, you know, if we have to go to the bathroom, we have a somewhat safe area to do that. And, you know, and because we're women and half the population is stronger than us, this is a requirement that we deserve. And it's like, we've almost lost hold of that thread of like, we deserve that. So I really love that phrasing.
Thank you so much for that, Katyjean and Jennifer. That leads me to the next question that I'd like to have us discuss. Both of you are mothers. Katyjean is also a mother, and she's put a lot of emphasis on how children are harmed by transgender ideology. And as many of our followers know, Katyjean really kicked off the Let Women Speak movement internationally with her Speakers Corner events and Standing for Women as an organization in Hyde Park in London. So, and she's coming to this movement as a mother, and the two of you are also coming to this movement as a mother. We've got Mother's Day coming up, and I'd just like to have you speak, both of you, to the role of mothers in the Let Women Speak movement and what that's been like for you. And we'll start with Jennifer, and I'll put you on the screen.
Thank you. Well, the role of mothers is huge, because coming to this as a mother, I felt entitled to my rights, because I feel like I've contributed to society like in so many ways, because when you have a child, you know, you get involved with things that you wouldn't normally have gotten involved with. Like, you know, I was a Girl Scout mom, and, you know, I put in, you know, a program in the school. My world became, you know, kind of kids inclusive. And when that happens, it becomes a service act, right? Because you're modeling behavior for children. You want them to have experiences when they're, when they're young, good experiences. So it really puts you in the community. And that's why having mothers come to this is so important, because they're already kind of entrenched in their community, and they can get the word out and make demands that like no one really else can. Like I say, the sports thing, well, women deserve sports, and here's one of the reasons why. Just the fact that we're human beings, and we deserve to have fair competition, if we're going to have a thing called competition, but also we deserve this because we make all these things happen. I mean, like, who do you think is driving these kids to practice? The boys. It's the moms. By far, it's the moms. So we have a voice that's like kind of unique, to where we're like, hey, we're in charge of the next generation, and we are doing our part. How dare you even question that, you're going to take our rights away? How about we take some of your things away? How about I not drive you? Right? I won't drive you to the boys. If the girls can't have sports, well, maybe the boys can't either. And if the mothers come in and say that, I mean, that's that whole sports business. It starts early, right? You don't have Jim McMahon unless his mom was driving him to practice. So like, we have so much more power than they want it to appear, right? So the mothers coming in are crucial to the movement.
Absolutely. Thank you. And what you said makes so much sense to me too, as a teacher in the public schools. I'm no longer a teacher in the public schools, so I feel safe discussing this, but it's the public schools are it's part of our public square, and it's a way for women to get involved in society and to be out and about. And I appreciate that comment that you made about being a mother, and how that made you get involved in your child's school and create a program that I've heard you talk about it before. It sounds like a wonderful program of making smoothies and community building and being out in public. Mothers have the opportunity to do that through the Free Speech for Women movement, but also just by being mothers and getting involved in their children's lives. Now we're going to go to Katyjean and have her talk about her experiences as a mother in the Let Women Speak movement. Katyjean, you're on.
Thanks again. So, I mean, yeah, mothers are so important to the movement, because we are standing up for our children, for one, and because you don't become a mother except for by fully experiencing your female body, right? So, like, in ways that maybe younger women don't understand, that mothers understand. And also shout out to lesbians. And sometimes there's an overlap of lesbians and mothers, but I think lesbians are also very in touch with their female body and what it means to be female. But I want to say that so we're activated in it because we know exactly what's at stake and what's on the line here in terms of our female body and what makes us unique. But I think that it is really important for mothers to stand up for our daughters and our sons, and to tell them that they don't have to participate in the pronoun game if they don't want to at school. That and we need to also be there to support our children, and remember that when our kids take a gender critical position at school, that they are also the ones that are targeted with labels like transphobic and just these made up ridiculous notions that are just they're copycat. It's a transphobia is a copycat notion against a legitimate idea like misogyny or like racism and things like that are rooted in legitimate ideas. But we know that it is impossible for a human being to actually change their sex. So no person is actually trans. So therefore, the people who say that they're trans are just pretending to be something that they're not. So we can't really be phobic of something that doesn't really exist. And so transphobe, like, I don't buy that. I don't buy that word. So in other words, we need to empower our children to understand that analysis and to not be limited by accusations of things like transphobia, because again, that's phony. And also to shelter and protect them in ways where they might be ostracized and bullied and targeted now, because they're the ones that are saying, this is reality. There's biological sex. There's male and female. There's men and women. There's boys and girls. We can't switch. The only transition is boys become men and girls become women. That's the only transition there is. And so whereas maybe, well, anyway, I'll leave it there. That's the only transition there is.
I think I hear your dog barking in the background, Mr. Jenkins, right?
Yes, my sweet puppy.
Okay.
Somebody's at the door. He's supervising. Somebody's at the door, right?
I see. Okay. Well, thank you for that, Katyjean. Let's move on to our next question, and I'll put this to you, Jennifer. What has the Women Speak Out Free Speech for Women movement in the USA achieved as far as legal and cultural gains in the rights and protections of girls and women?
Well, we are a pretty powerful group. What we've achieved, well, what I would like to see happen is that we break into new territory. So, these speakers corners that aren't really happening in, let's say, Massachusetts, Connecticut. I want to break into new territory, because what the Free Speech for Women is really about is establishing vetted locations where women feel a sense of safety, at least a somewhat sense that, the police will protect them. And as we're doing this, as we're breaking into, because we have, like, since Madison, we've had them in Florida, we've had them in Wisconsin, we've had them in Philly, or in Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, and California, and Oregon, and Washington. I think there was one in Oklahoma. So, I mean, like, that's pretty good considering we just started a year ago, right? We're getting them in probably 15, 20 states at this point. I'd like to see them in every state. So that's where I'd like to go with the speakers corners. And the reason it's so necessary is because, with the technology, we don't really know what free speech is anymore. You don't really have free speech. You don't know if you have free speech till you get on the ground and they try to stop you, right? So, like, that's the litmus test to the truth of what's happening, right? And when you're on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube and you get banned, that's sort of, it's like, okay, I got banned. That's not good. But when you go on the street and people try to stop you from speaking on the street, you come to the realization that free speech in America isn't really happening, right? Like, if there's places in America where you can't speak, then we don't have free speech. So we didn't really know that until we went on the ground and tried it. So that's part of, like, the realization for everyone to see this modeling of behavior of us trying to speak and people coming to stop us. That's a whole new ball game, right? That's not, you're in the comfort of your own home and, oh darn, I got banned, right? That's, wow, there's a dude right here telling me I can't speak, right? And
intimidating with his male body, with his 6'4" male body, with his male muscles, pound for pound, stronger than you. And you don't know, as testosterone, you don't know when this guy is going to, like, snap and decide to, like, take his ideas from, just words into violence. And at the moment that man who you're trying to engage with, who's, making you, at the moment he does decide to switch over,
and it really does bring to the viewer, right, the differences between the sexes. A man can come and stop 10 women from speaking, and it's like, of course we don't want to screw around with them. We don't want their shenanigans. They come and bring it to us because they're achieving lots of times with their noisemakers, stopping us from being heard. And like that, you don't get that juxtaposition on the internet like you do in person. So I think part of the movement is letting people know this is, you think we have free speech? Well, go try it. Go try it and see if we do, because we don't. Because I've tried it over and over and over and over again. And I mean, there has been times where the police have protected us, but there's been times where the police have not protected us. They have not protected our civil liberties and our right to free speech. And the world needs to see that, so that they're aware that that's where we're at. Because it's really hard to figure out where we're at, because we're looking through the world, most of us, through this veneer of social media. And it's not an honest picture of where we're at. I got banned on Twitter, but you don't think I got banned on Twitter. Now I'm going to go to some speaking event and a man is going to physically assault me for speaking. That's not the leap that you go to from social media when you get kicked off. But when you try to go on the street and there's a dude, going to physically assault you because you're speaking, then the reality sinks in. That's the real reality. The reality is that we don't have free speech in America. And the men think they have it. The men still think they have it because they're not the ones going out talking about, gender. Well, now that they're starting to come out, they're starting to realize they don't have it either. And this thing with Tucker getting fired, it's like anybody that talks about this gets, the men that get fired and the women get fired. But wait till those fired men go to the street. They'll find out what's happening. That in America, we don't have free speech. And that's like, if we don't have free speech, we are literally slaves. They can tell us to say anything. They can tell us that's a man. They can say he's a dog. And maybe the person is like, I'm not a dog, but everybody else is saying you are. And instead of talking to you, they're barking,
They can say you're crazy, right? They can say you're insane. And so your opinion doesn't matter because we're going to call you insane, or we're going to call you a criminal. We're going to make these people criminals and now they're felons and now you can't talk, So, I mean, like there's gradual steps and it happens slowly. It's the boiling of the frog. But one thing I want to say is that women, we need you. Like we need more women. We need those brave women, those strong women that are willing to say, hey, men might be trying to intimidate us and silence us, but we will not be intimidated. And we know that women are strong in numbers. And so we are going to get those numbers together and we are going to go out there and women will be heard. We will be heard and we will not stop speaking. We will play cat and mouse all day long if that's what you want to play. We're the cat, you're the mouse. We'll win, and women will prevail, and we will be heard. But you need to, women, find your sisterhood, and we're strong in numbers. We are strong in numbers. So find your sisters and get out there and be heard. Otherwise, all of these things that we're speaking about may come true. But we have our opportunity right now. We need to take it. We need to use it. You have a constitutional right to stand on any public corner and say what you want to say. So grab 3 of your friends and, 4 women, free speech, for women.
Wonderful, Katyjean. Yeah, I got really inspired by you when we started organizing Speakers Corner / Free Speech for Women events in the Midwest. And I think we were at a potluck or somewhere, maybe a restaurant, and you were like, free speech for women. That's all you need, for women. And since then, though, because of the violence and how I think it's escalated, our group here in Madison has chosen to do Turf Tea Time from the safety of our living room, which is a variety show. So a lot of those same women who were doing our Speakers Corner events are now coming into WLRN studios so that we can actually have our voices heard, but it's online, and that's different than taking up physical space outside on the street. And I'm wondering, hey, I don't know, I hear a lot of background noise. Is that you, Jen, maybe? Is it raining?
It's raining. It's raining.
Oh, it's
There's
raining.
nothing I can do about that.
So we'll ignore the rain. But I'm
Mm.
wondering if you can comment on that, because the goals maybe of the Free Speech for Women movement might be changing, not the goals, but like the way that we do the Free Speech for Women movement, the Let Women Speak movement in the US. I'm going to mute you while I'm asking the question. Those methods that we're using might be changing. Things have a lot has happened over this past year. Some groups who want to go out on the streets and do demonstrations are requiring trainings, nonviolent direct action trainings. There's all kinds of ways that we're evolving and changing and growing as a movement, and they are changing their tactics as we change our tactics. And so what we've decided so far right now here in Madison is we're going to be doing our free Speech for Women events live from WLRN studios. And instead of going up to the Capitol and risking the police maybe not protecting us as much as we'd like to be protected, or the trans activists being super sneaky and aggressive and maybe harming one of us. So that's that's where we are at right now in Madison. And so I'd like you to both kind of speak to that. Jennifer, we'll start with you.
Well, any way you can get out there and get the word out is a good thing, right? I mean, and if it's too dangerous, or if you're feeling like the police aren't going to protect you, then my whole MO is go somewhere else, because we are not in this to get abused, right? We're in this to get our message out. So, I mean, after Port Townsend, because I was injured in Port Townsend and the police didn't protect us. And it was just like a cascade of like our civil liberties being robbed from us, basically. I did Pittsburgh right after that. And the hashtag for Pittsburgh was Women Will Be Heard, right? And we were heard. I am looking at speakers corners more like, if I go in there, I go talk to the police that, the week before, if I sense anything untoward, anything that is, suspicious, I don't need to do a speakers corner at that location. I'll find another location that's gonna have police officers that will serve and protect, free speech. So that's sort of my approach. So like, if say this thing in Trenton, if I went there and the police seemed a little weird, or they weren't gonna, they were kind of acting, because you kind of can tell, how they're going to treat you at the event. If you do the preliminary work, if there was anything about, the way that they behaved with me, that's, pinged my senses that they weren't going to protect us, I'm going to go somewhere else, because I don't want to get into a situation where, like Port Townsend again, where we are literally, our lives are being threatened, right? So
can I just interrupt for a moment and say how much of that though was because there wasn't a proper police liaison building up that rapport ahead of time and negotiating with the police. I don't know if you caught the WLRN show with Katyjean and Amanda Stolman about their experiences as police liaisons for the New York City event. They were pretty much working 24/7 for like a week leading up to that event, communicating, building up a rapport and negotiating a barrier and all kinds of things with the police. I mean, if that
that's where Port Townsend,
that's
where Port Townsend is a little unusual, because there was that going on, the liaison, right? We were liaising with the police. Amy, I think, had 7 back and forth emails. I got there 2 days early and was on a phone call with Chief Olson twice. So like, it wasn't that I mean, I didn't have my senses about me where I was in the town and visiting with him in person. And when I did the day of the event, I knew the day of the event, I knew that he wasn't going to protect us. But I mean, I wasn't from Port Townsend. So I really stress going in person and dealing with the police, and, negotiating with the police, because you're gonna receive so much more information from seeing them there in front of you. You're gonna see their lackadaisical responses. You're gonna see their apathy, whereas in emails and phone calls, it's not as intuitive, right? It's not, you don't get the same picture. So Port Townsend, that was early on. That was a learning experience. Luckily, none of us got really hurt. I got hurt. I had vertigo for a month, my neck, he stole my shoe, tried to steal my phone. So we did have some errors there because the police were right around the corner, just listening to our cries, basically. And that was unfortunate. You're not always going to get things right. If you do things, sometimes it's not going to work out, it just happens. But you can do these preliminary, checks with the people, the permit holders, right? Where you're getting the permit, if they're agreeable, if the police are agreeable to you, you can do that. And now I know to do that, right? When I went to Port Townsend, I was just a guest at that, event. I thought my boots on the ground experience would help on the ground, and it did. It could have gotten a lot worse, but now that I've had that experience, I've taken that and pretty much said, I'm not doing this unless I know the police are going to protect us. And every speaker's corner I've had since, and this is just the ones I hold. I mean, everybody has their own way of doing it. I make sure those cops are on at least the side of the law and respecting, the right for people to have free speech in America, right? And there are places where the cops don't respect that. So you really have to kind of, the most important part of a event is the location and the time. The day and the location, and you have to factor in everything. I'm doing another one in Pittsburgh on June 16th. Well, I didn't want to go when it was school was out, because I don't want a mob, but June is Pride Month, right? So I might run into some problems there. So I'm factoring in everything I can think of that's going to have an effect on my speakers corners. The ones I'm holding. And it's just really feeling it out. You really have to kind of just go and be I'm going to go. Because it's hard to go to the police, because they're why are you even doing this, lady? Why should we protect? Why do we have to protect you? You could just not do this. How about that? That's their attitude towards you. So it's hard to go in there and demand it. But I feel entitled. I've paid taxes my whole life. I feel entitled to have protection for one of our, our rights, as people. So
they are there to protect and serve.
Yeah, you have to sort of talk yourself into it before you go. But once you have that attitude, they fall in line. They'll tell you, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And I'm doing this. Yeah, I know it's hard, and it doesn't sound like fun that you're going to get, maybe piss thrown on you as a cop, right? Because they're used to that. They've told me they've gotten all kinds of stuff thrown at them, abused, right?
Yep.
So they
those
don't
sirens go in their ears too. They told me when I've been talking to the police about the counter protesters.
Yeah, so they're why are you doing that? We don't want to deal with this, but you have to stand your ground, put your boundaries up and say, I have a right to do this, and it's your job to protect us. So, but you don't have to be a jerk about it, but you got to be firm with them, because even the men that are on our side, they just want it to go away. You know what I mean? They don't want to deal with it, but we're dealing with it because we're women. Right. So we're no, you're going to deal with this. So that's sort of you know, my summation of, you know, what I've seen with speakers corners, you know, when you're in one that's violent, probably the best thing to do is to just end it. Like that was another thing with Port Townsend that I learned. Like we probably should have wrapped that up a little sooner. So there's all kinds of like tactics that you can use to counter this. And with each speaker's corner that we do, we learn. So
Right.
we're getting freaking good at this.
Yeah.
You know.
So how do we teach other women? How do we bring other women into the movement? Because as Katyjean has pointed out, numbers are really important, and there are more TERFs out there than there are not, probably, but they're afraid or they don't know. How do we train women to participate in the Speakers Corner movement, the Free Speech for Women, Let Women Speak movement, and make sure that everyone's safe? Katyjean, I'll let you talk about that first.
Thanks. Yeah, I think, well, I just want to encourage women to do it, you know, to go ahead and do it. And like the reality is that if you are privately getting together with women and just privately organizing something, just giving you permission to get out there on the corner, you don't have to broadcast in advance before you go and do your thing. You could keep it totally secret and private and do your thing, right? So that's one way maybe to make it safe. You know, if nobody knows you're going to be doing it, you know, obviously then you're safer doing it. So that's like one idea, and then that gives you kind of the temperature of what the climate is like, and then like get out of there. I also think experience. We learn so much from experience. I could tell you so much about what happened and what worked and what we did in our teams, but that only made sense because of the different specific individual personalities that we were dealing with in our local area, and the police in our area, and the location that we chose, which, you know, that is different for each woman and in your city near you. Think globally, act locally. And so just so that will be my guidance. And then also we do have a guide available on our FemaXX News website. If you go femaxxnews.com/free speech for women, you'll find a helpful guide of some things that we have learned to just get started. But I think the biggest thing is start small with your friends and the people that you know that you can trust, and you know, privately build your contact list, and just get out there and do it, and let experience be your teacher.
And if I may add, when you're seeing the people doing speakers corners, like the first time I did a speakers corner was probably my, I don't know, 30th event that I went to, right? But I didn't start public the first time, right? The first event, we just showed up. I didn't tell anyone, right? So it's a gradual. So what Katyjean is saying is just get out there, you know, don't advertise your events, do them, practice getting out there. And then eventually you will get to the point where you're like, I'm going to do a big event. I have enough experience on the ground to where I think I can handle all the components to do a larger event, right? I can handle getting the permit. I can handle liaison with the cops. I can handle the press. I can handle, you know, organizing the women and, you know, like getting invites in. I can handle, you know, the advertising and marketing that goes with it. But like, you know, it looks like I just opened up my shop and all of a sudden I was an expert in free speech for women events. But in reality, you know, I was at, you know, cyclocross, you know, alone with no advertising. You know, we did these protests and not speakers corners, but we did protests for a year before we even started the speakers corners. So, and how we did that was we just did what I call smash and grabs, which is like, you just get a group together and get your bullhorn and go out there and do it, right? Like that was, and you know, don't put the ads out so they don't know where you're at, do it. And then you're just getting that community engagement, which is really fun. And you learn so much from talking to the people, because then you find out most people don't agree with this. Most people are like on our side. So, and then you get more and more emboldened and courageous,
and you can broadcast it online.
Yeah, the more you know about actually what's on the ground, most people agree with us. it gives you confidence to be like, okay, I'm going to do a speaker's corner. And then, you know, it might be like, okay, I'm going to do a speaker's corner. We're not going to advertise. We're just going to put it out on a live stream. And then the next time you're like, you know what? I'm going to do a speaker's corner where Katyjean vetted a location. She already vetted the location. Or like, I'm going to do a speaker's corner in Philly. I'll call Jennifer and get the permit, get her contacts to the police. We already know that's a safe location. The reason I'm doing speakers corners is not so that I can have Philly all to myself or Pittsburgh all to myself. I'm doing it to break ground so that the women know what to expect and have an expectation of security. They know sort of that speakers corner is vetted, and I can do that. I can do that. And you know what? I'll help you. I will help you do a speaker's corner. If you want to go do a speaker's corner in Philly, call me. I'll give you all the resources that I have built there, because I want to go to Connecticut or Massachusetts or Rhode Island. You know what I mean? Like, I want to keep moving and have the women that need that extra assurance that they're going to be protected. They can take over those spots. You know, I'd love to go to a speaker's corner that I didn't put on, because that's us growing. So like, if anybody wants to do that, you know, all the women that are putting them on will help you, you know, especially with the vetted locations.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But do you think that there needs to be like some sort of formal training, or do you think that this can just be organic and women teaching women and learning from women horizontally?
I don't think you can have formal training for what we're talking about. Like, you need to actually do this. Like, there's not formal training. I mean, if you wanted to do one and you said, Jennifer, when you go to the police station, I'll go with you. That's formal training. Me saying, okay, when you go to the police station, because you have to feel it out. You can't get training for that. You have to listen to your instincts. You have to, I mean, there's training like, okay, here you want to know what the training I give is. If someone takes your sign, let them have it. We don't want anybody getting hurt over a sign. If you are at a protest and you are the one advancing forward, watch your feet. That means you're the aggressor. If you're stepping forward, you're the aggressor. There's really, and then the other advice is act like you do when you walk down the street. You know the law, you obey the law, right? Everybody knows how to behave on in the public square. That's how you behave. So watch, you know, if they take your sign, let them. Watch your feet, because if you're moving forward, you are now in the aggressor. The police are viewing you as an aggressor, and behave like you normally would. You know, we've all have experience of walking on the public sidewalk. So that's the expectation. I don't really know if you need training for that. I mean, if you feel you need training, then there's plenty of women that will provide that for you. But like, I don't necessarily think you need training, but everybody, I have a lot of experience. I mean, I worked concerts before this. So like, I have a lot of experience with security in large groups. So I'm comfortable. I don't know what other people's comfort level are, but if you're comfortable, if your comfort level is like, hey, I think I can do this, you probably don't need like a training series on it.
I think that some of the concern is that the women, that we ourselves might get so worked up emotionally that we would do something that we wouldn't normally do in the public square, but that is provocative of the violence. You know, I mean, like we saw at the Speakers Corner in Madison, we did have a nonviolent direct action training the night before, which I think really helped us, you know, to no, not to engage with the counter protesters, but there were some women who, you know, were yelling up in the faces of the TRAs, and that's not safe. We don't want that, you know. And so because of the training, I think that there were 2 women who helped that one woman who was doing that to move away from the crowd. And so I do see the value of having a training for women like that are not like yourself, Jennifer, who have all this experience leading up to it.
I think there's value in training if it gives you the confidence, right? Like if like for me, I didn't go to that training, right? Because I'm like, because I had a different workshop to go to, actually. No, I think I got there late. I drove in, so that was the first night. I think that training is a good idea. I just don't think it's a requirement. Let's put it that way. You are not required to do training. Everybody knows their level of where they're at going in. If you think you're nervous or you're quick to temper, then take the training. But like if you think you're good, it's not a requirement. I don't want to put any requirements on women.
It's not a requirement for the events that you're organizing, but there are women's groups that are making the training, their training a requirement in order to participate. And I think that's fine. I think we should have a diversity of tactics. And if you're organizing a speaker's corner or a demonstration and you've got a bunch of women who are all on the same page and they believe in this philosophy of training and the way that they want to do it, then I think that that's fine for them to do it that way. And
of course, that's their of course that's their prerogative. I'm just saying that I don't necessarily think it's a requirement. I mean, there's lots of protests that go on and there's not training involved. Like people are allowed to get up and speak without having some box to check. Did you do the training? Well, you can't come if you didn't do the training. That you're not going to get that at my speakers corners. Let's just put it that way.
Right. That's what I wanted to say. You organize in your way and other women organize in their way. And hopefully, the idea is that we'll have a diversity of tactics. We can coexist and we can respect one another. And that's where I want us to go, is I want us to feel feminist unity. I want us to be able to collaborate, cooperate, and coexist, even if we're not exactly on the same page. Katyjean, would you like to speak to this? And then we're going to have to wrap it up. So I'd like you to think of a few parting words. The last question that I had for you is, where are we now in the Let Women Speak USA movement? And where do you think we should go? Katyjean, I'll let you talk about that. If you're ready, go ahead and say whatever you want to say.
Sounds good. So many thoughts there. And I was trying to be really careful to not interrupt, but sorry, a couple of times I just blurted out. So sorry about that. But point is, I like what Pinwheel had to say in the chat just at the end here, is that overall, it hasn't, women are not the ones that are at the cause of making any of these events violent, right? We are not the instigators of the violence or the aggression. So, that seems about right for what you expect with what, like just in the world and out there when we see violence that's happening. Almost all violence is started in originating, violence and aggression of all sorts is starting and originating with men. And a lot of times when women are being aggressive, it's in response to the violence, aggression, inappropriateness, and encroachment of other people on that woman's right. And she is just defending herself and her own rights that other people shouldn't have been interfering with in the first place. I also, second thing I wanted to say is I want to call everyone's attention to a young woman in North Carolina named Peyton McNabb. She's a volleyball player who was severely injured. And her whole senior year of she was a women athlete, a girl who's an athlete, and her whole senior year of sports was taken from her because of an injury that she experienced during her volleyball season, because she competed against a man, an 18-year-old man who obviously they're stronger and powerful, and he spiked a ball at his full strength right into her face, and that caused neurological damage, and it has affected her sports career. She has decided to speak out about that. Again, that's Peyton McNabb. She is speaking out and has been vocal. A great interview that she did with Megyn Kelly just today or yesterday that it dropped. Anyway, so let's support girls and women like Peyton who are at the front lines of the of experiencing all the harm and the ramifications that come from allowing this lie that men can be women or that boys can be girls, and allowing that to encroach on our rights and our safety. So where does this go in the future? I would like to see women standing up all over, everywhere, where you are at. Whether you are at work and somebody's compelling you to put pronouns in or call somebody they or something like that, just silently, quietly, passively just say, I don't participate in that. I call him who I see, and I'm seeing a man in front of me, so I call men he, kind of things like that. Support your daughters in sports. Support your sons to be respectful of women and to understand the differences between men and women and boys and girls. And wherever you are at, women, find the sisters in your neighborhood that you can speak out with. And so where the future is women, wherever they are at, speaking out in all sorts of ways, big and small. And all of us just saying, we will not put up with this. We know who a woman is. That woman is me. And I'm going to stand up for women and girls, and for each of us to say that.
Love you, Katyjean. You're so positive. Your energy is so contagious. I hope that I get to do another event with you in the future. So, Jay Thomas, what are your parting words?
My parting words are, whatever you're seeing, what's happening on the ground, like the speakers corners, they're fun. Come to one.
Yes.
You have a great time. I mean, it looks a little risk. It's a little exciting, right? And you get to speak your mind, and you get to be in community with women, sisters in solidarity. And it's thrilling, exciting. Like, it's way better than the internet and staying at home. It's way better. It's so much fun. And that really gets lost in all this. Like, that we're having a blast. Okay.
Yes.
We might look scared. We might look angry. We might look but the reason I keep doing it is because I'm having a great time. So I do want to get that message out there too, that yeah, it's work, and it's a little scary, and we have some confrontation, and there's problems, but all in all, I wouldn't be doing it if I wasn't having a great time and really like enjoying other women, the sisterhood, the work that we're all doing together, recognizing each other's work, recognizing that they're showing up, everyone's showing up, and, we're there to support each other. But like, not only are we there to support, we're there to go have a drink afterwards. We're there to go, hang out in a parking lot and listen to music. It's not all just like, this brute, force against us. We are strong, and like, we have not lost our spirit. And when we do get together, it's really a great time. So that's something I just wanted everybody to know. Like, you're going to come. There's all kinds of things that are going to happen, but one of them is you're going to have a big smile on your face, and you're going to be like, I want to go to the next one. When's the next one? So just come to your first one, and you'll have a whole new social stratosphere that you're working in, and you're going to love it.
Yeah, the femisphere. All right. Well, thank you so much, ladies. Both of you have done so much for our movement, and it's wonderful to have you on. And I will be editing some of this content to have it be a part of our monthly podcast. WLRN is celebrating 7 years in your ears this May 2023. And Katyjean and Jennifer Thomas will be part of that 7-year anniversary podcast set to drop on May 4th. And thank you to our online audience for participating in the chat. And yeah, have a wonderful Saturday, and we'll catch you out on the streets and also at Turf Tea Time online.
Congratulations, Thistle, 7 years. That's a great accomplishment. Good job.
Thank you.
Great
All
work,
right.
Thistle.
Okay.